Mine's just
Welcome
been cancelled
back.
tonight.
Something's just been cancelled. I don't know what that is yet, Kev. What, the walking football? That's
Walking
not
football,
been
aye. My walking football's been cancelled tonight. No enough bodies.
Dearie me. I'm Paul John Dykes, as you know. This is Kevin Graham. And we're going old school, Kev, because this is what we did back in the day, 2017, almost 8 years ago. Episode number 1 of A Celtic State of Mind. And here we are, all this time later. We spoke about music back then. The band on your cap have appeared on our channel. That's just the way it goes. We were just talking there about walking football because Jim Orr, the Oracle, some might call him, is playing football rather than talking Celtic today. So big shout out to Jim, who's back from injury. But I don't know, what's walking football? Is that like when you get to 40 and you're done? Is that what it comes down to?
It's meant to be for over 50s, but if like you get to a certain age where you can't really play fives and that, so the walking football, the idea behind it is it's non-contact. You get 3 touches of the ball and you're no meant to run. That is the preference of it. So there's less chance of injury, even though if you ever try to walk really, really fast, sometimes your hamstrings do think that they're actually going to pin. I've told people that I've played it in that, and they do laugh. And I go, well, go and try it. And they're absolutely knackered. It's knackering. It is knackering trying to walk because you're constantly having to move.
Jim says this, right? And I just can't get this vision in my head, Kev. Remember back in the day, you would watch the games on the telly and it was just like the walking race and people were walking and it just looked ridiculous the way that they were shaking their hips. So when I look at that, I'm just envisaging you and Jim Orr and guys like Tommy Sheridan all just kind of walking funny on a football park. I need to do it myself. I'm not slagging you off. Maybe it is difficult.
I know Tommy was a bit sceptical about it. Then he started playing it and he's won a European Cup, I think. I think he took a team.
Was it the World Cup? No.
The World Cup. He took a team to Spain, and he's a big advocate. Look, you see, like guys like myself and that who used to play football 3-4 times a week, then you stop and you try to get into the gym and that. Maybe you didn't. Next thing you can, you've got to middle age, and you'll be a certain amount of guys who used to like playing football, but maybe can't run about anymore. So it's just. It keeps you. Put a ball in front of me, I'll walk after it all day.
There's a social aspect as well.
And there is a social aspect.
Getting together, mental health,
and,
the whole thing.
And before anybody comes into the comments that ever saw me playing football, anyway, in my younger days, I never ran on a football park anyway. So that's.
But did you run on with the wee bucket of water and the sponge and stuff like that, Kev? Because you were a bit of a hod carrier, eh? Did you not bother doing that?
I didn't even do that. Even when I got a game, I was a winger that never run. I invented David Beckham before David Beckham even existed.
You never know. One of these days, maybe there's going to be an Axom tournament or exhibition game and we'll see it in action. Let's get the comments straight off the bat. Ian Roy, great to see you on the YouTube. I think Brendan will give it one more go in the Champions League. If successful, he may stay longer. We're talking, of course, about the gaffer because things are going well, Kev. They will always look for some kind of narrative to pull the rug from under our feet or to pee on our parade and all this kind of thing. We're about to wrap up our 4th league title in a row and the stories are already surfacing around Brendan going to be leaving the club and all this kind of stuff. This obviously culminates in him going for a treble, which he normalised as a football manager when he came in first time round, Kevin. People are linking him to Ange's job, which Ange still has, and all this kind of nonsense. But I'm looking at Brendan Rodgers and I'm looking at the trajectory of his career. I'm also looking to, and let's be honest, the links he has to Celtic beyond being the manager of the football club, which Ange, for example, didn't have. And I'm going to stick my neck on a line here and say that not only will he see out his contract, Kev, I think he's going to stay here for another 1 or 2 years beyond that. What's the vibe you're getting? It's a different kind of vibe than the first time round, isn't it?
I'm going to go back to his first press conference when he says he'll be here for the 3 years. And that's the timescale I'm sort of expecting. He'll have another crack at the Champions League next year. And maybe we can't really say nothing to see what actually happens in the summer. To see how he's backed in the summer, see what happens in the summer. I don't think he'll make a decision until after the summer whether he's going to. I mean, we've all heard the rumours that there is a contract on the table. I mean, we've all heard that. All heard that rumour. Does he fancy another crack at English Premiership? I don't know. Even though in age terms he's young, he's done a lot of years as a manager, like the day-to-day club management age. So he might be looking after the 3 years to take a wee break for that, then eventually move back. And he always says that he fancied being an international manager in a Spanish-speaking country because he can speak Spanish.
Can he?
He's never mentioned that, No, he hasn't. So the way my head is at the moment, that he's here for the 3 years, and then we'll take it for that. And I haven't seen anything to suggest that that's going to be any different. Again, the conversation with Dermot in the summer will probably give us a better indication of what's actually going to happen.
And you and I have not spoken to an ex-Celt with contacts in English football who has told us any different, Kev. Because the last time we were given the heads up, and we didn't mention it on the podcast, and then we got a shoe-in from a few people for no mentioning it.
And that person with certain contacts in English media, who Sylvester Stallone played in a film, that even he was surprised that we didn't know it, because it was common knowledge.
Yeah.
It was real common knowledge.
It was the talk of the steaming. Yeah, everybody knew it was happening. Right, that's why obviously the suit was already fitted up and tailored for him when he went down there. Just a wee insight into this evening. As you know, 6 o'clock every Friday night. This is Axom. And look at that for a lineup, Kev. Look at that for a lineup. It's like The Usual Suspects. Remember that film, The Usual Suspects? When that was prior to Kevin Spacey getting cancelled, obviously. And it's myself tonight, and I'm being joined by Tino, Axom, and Quinny. Axom,
the A-team's looking poor, man.
I know one of us needs to wear a cap like Mad Murdoch. You know what I mean?
Tino's Hannibal, ain't he?
He definitely is. Where's his cigar?
Quinny's howling Mad Murdoch. Axom's Mr. T. That makes you the face.
Aye, mate, I'll take that. But every Friday night, the face is getting bigger. There we go. Tino, Axom, and Quinny. This is Axom tonight. And I think it's a good lineup in that you've got talking heads from different platforms, Kev. You're going to have absolutely a bit of discourse, disagreement, and all this kind of stuff. And if it goes well and if it's well received, we might even do it on a regular basis, This is Axom with Tino, Axom, and Quinny. We'll get some of their faces on the show because it is all about keeping it fresh. So thanks, everybody, for your support on that show. As you know, we're not just going to try and get big hitting guests every single week, because it's all about trying to dig in to what is an individual Celtic state of mind. What's their experience as a Celtic fan? The trials and tribulations, Kev, and these stories are phenomenal. And we've had them with Celtic fans from the world of film, sport, music, culture, the arts. And, it's an enjoyable show for me, because you know the template of Axom, and that was the idea from day one, wasn't it?
Definitely. And that was the reason that I got on board. And I do remember the first conversation that we had, and I says, I'm not really interested in talking 24/7 about who's playing left back and this and that. There's a bigger picture with Celtic as a state of mind. I'm interested in people's stories. I'm interested in the political aspect of the club, because I think being a Celtic fan is a political statement, really. And that's just my opinion. But I think being a Celtic fan is political. I think there's a political statement to being a Celtic fan as well, especially for maybe our generation, Paul, and our dad's generations and their dad's generations as well. But I still do think that being a Celtic fan, that there's a conscience, and there's got to be there's a wider berth being a Celtic fan. It's not just about a club; it's about a community. That's
100%. 100%, Kev. And by the way, I think even just in the here and now, you look at the world in which we live right now. Football, obviously, is one of the things that people think, isn't that important in the great scheme of things. For anyone who's as obsessed with football as us, it obviously is important. But global issues that don't arise, they're omnipresent throughout, certainly my life, on a political level. What you tend to find is that those with a similar political state of mind, Kev, veer towards this thing called Celtic. I mean, I'm not saying everybody does because of the political edge, but a lot of people do, A lot of people with no skin in the game. Like, I was looking there, King Tut's tonight, AJ Tracy, has landed in Scotland, and you might have seen the images of him with the Celtic training gear and a couple of bottles of Iron Brew. And it's like, I've often said, Kev, if you're to just land in this place called Glasgow or Scotland, and it was like, right, there's your 40 football clubs, choose one. And you've done a bit of digging in. I would like to think that the team I would choose, because I never chose Celtic, but the team that I would choose would be Celtic because of that political conscience. I mean, the social aspect of it, Kev, to know sometimes and more often than not, before it's the kind of widespread belief that you're on the right side of history. And I look at certain bands and I think to myself, I think they should be political as well. Not all bands, Kev, pop bands manufactured, they're not going to make a political statement. But I think that big bands have done in the past, and we veer towards them. You look at Roger Waters, for example, using the Celtic tifo all over the world, globally, taking it global as a message for Palestine. I look at Kneecap just now, back in the day, Rage Against the Machine. Ahead of the curve, Kev. So, yeah, not everybody wants to talk politics, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a Celtic state of mind.
No, we're sort of talking about, but how many folk have we interviewed, Paul? And how many folk have you've interviewed far more than me? And when they start talking about their Celtic upbringing, it's a life upbringing. It's not just a football club, and it's about all the things you say. It's about their views, causes, community, everything's actually there. And that comes from how Celtic were founded. And it does come from, yes, we are a football club, but there is a political aspect of supporting Celtic for a lot of the fans. I'm not going to say all the fans because I can't speak, but the majority of the fans that I know, there's a political aspect as well. And that goes back. And it goes right back to their upbringing, and I think that's part of the Celtic state of mind. But then I'm completely fine with folk that check out and they just want us to win football games as well.
No, you're right.
I just think there's something bigger.
There's waves. I think there's waves of, people who support a football club for a specific reason, and sometimes it's success. So if you imagine Celtic winning the European Cup in '67 and the fairy tale element of that and the story behind it, Kev, one that's been unmatched when you look at the fact that it was, 11 local boys, a Glasgow and District Select that took over Europe and did it in an entertaining fashion. There were people who fell in love with Celtic because of that. And that had nothing to do with politics. That was just the fairy tale element of a football team being built from the ground up and, conquering Europe. So it's not just the politics, absolutely. But in terms of the political state of mind, the Celtic state of mind, it can go hand in hand. The terrace culture, Kev, isn't always politically driven. But I think you look at Celtic's ultras, and more often than not, there are massive political statements being made. I want to talk about that, though.
Read the book by James Montague, Among the Ultras. It's a very, very good book. And they talk about ultra groups being apolitical, and there's some ultra groups that are very political and some ultra groups that try not to be. Yeah. But if you say nothing, there's a quote in the book, I think it's for the guy for Harmaby. And he says, if you say nothing, it's a political statement. If you say something, it's a political statement. If you're silent, it's political. If you're not silent, it's a political statement. So everything that you really do, they're talking about on the terraces, is like a political statement anyway. It's a very good book. I would recommend anybody to read it.
I always think as well, when I go back to the 1980s, prior to the old fella agreeing to take me to the games because I would have just been a pain and I'd have just held him back. And I would have cut into the bevying time and all that, Kev. Not that my dad's a mad bevyer, but back then it was working overtime. My dad worked in the pit. Other people would have worked in the steelworks and all the rest, all the industries within Scotland. Not everybody was within that kind of workplace. But him and his mates, Kev, this was the outlet. Celtic was the outlet at the weekend where they were able to go and be within their friendship group. And my dad, I always remember sitting there waiting on the bus coming to pick him up. It could have been a paint van. Any kind of mode of transport coming to pick him up. It was uncles and cousins and all this kind of stuff, all going to the Celtic game. And during the 1980s, obviously, where a lot of people coming from the same working background where we were just getting, trampled into the ground by Thatcher's Britain, if you like, Kev. There was obviously a lot of political discussions happening to and from the game and at the game itself. So don't write it off. I love a recommendation, Kev. You've just given me one, and I'm going to check it out. Here's mine just now: A People's History of the British Empire by John Newsinger. It's called The Blood That Never Dried. That's a book that about 3/4 of the way through. Go and check it out. Brilliant. Now, we're going to be talking Celtic, but we're talking ultra groups as well, and there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect at the moment, Kev, between a statement that the club has made and a response from the North Curve's Twitter handle, which basically is going back to the last time we played Rangers and the treatment of the Celtic fans before the game. Celtic have come out with another statement saying that it's an ongoing investigation, and Fairhurst are the independent company who are conducting a review, and a big part of that obviously is to engage with fans who were affected by it. And North Curve come out and say that there has been no discussions with the club, certainly from their group. So there does still seem to be a disconnect here, Kev.
I mean, Celtic, I read the statement as well. I haven't read the North Curve statement, so sorry about that. I've been working this morning. So the Celtic statement basically says that they're asking for you to email and they will discuss things with you. What actually happened there. So I'll need to take the North Curve on that. I think Celtic are maybe actually saying they've maybe had discussions with the groups to say, oh, we're going to investigate this, and they've came out and says contact Fairhurst and put your complaints into them or put your statements into them, and that's not really what the North Curve actually are actually wanting. They want a discussion with the club, because I'm sure they probably have a kind of cynical mind, the same as me, regarding the some of the statements Celtic made straight after it. For the other folk that I know in the supporters groups, I don't know if they've actually spoke to the club either regarding it. So Celtic want to put this to an independent third party to take the statements and produce a report. So it's very disappointing. Once again, I think dialogue's a massive, massive thing between the support and the club. Yep. And it's something that the club don't do very well.
Well, we've spoken about that since day one, Kev. Dialogue, the simplicity is genius when it comes to communication, but how often is that the one bit of the operation that you and I criticise? We're keen to get as many comments in as possible. We're talking about Brendan Rodgers and the future of him at Celtic Football Club that some people have just been a wee bit too quick to try and question. And for me, James Curran comes in. He said he would put in Brendan on a rolling contract, not a lengthy deal. Celtic have got a history doing that, though, Kev, having a gaffer on a 12-month rolling deal. It's not something that would concern me if that was the case.
No, it's not something that would concern me, but it seems when Brendan's came in this time, I mean, Postecoglou was on a rolling contract, wasn't he? He was. It seemed when Brendan came in this time, he demanded, I want 3 years and we'll see where we are after it.
Yeah,
and they didn't want this rolling contract, but it leads to more uncertainty as well, because you can leave at any point. You've always got a year left, but I think the 3-year fixed deal was driven by Brendan this time.
Yeah, and the difference for me, Kev, right, when you look at this now, we're not over the line yet. We've got a league to wrap up. We'll be talking about the Dundee United game, and we have a Scottish Cup to wrap up against Aberdeen before we can say that we've won a treble. But the way the second season is going this time round for Brendan, it's and I'm not talking about circumstance, but in terms of trophy wins, it's a mirror image of Ange's 2 seasons at Celtic. He wins a double, he wins a treble. When Ange wins the treble, though, I'm looking at that scenario, and was I surprised that he left the football club? No, I wasn't. Because there's a few things here. I think that when Ange came to Celtic, it had been his ambition to come to Europe. He wanted to manage in European football, Kev, and I know that he'd had a brief spell in Greek football. But when it comes to Celtic, with that view to having a chance to play in the Champions League, I just always felt that as soon as he got an opportunity to go to England, he would. Because he was never, he was never a Celtic fan. He was a Liverpool fan. He spoke about that at the very first press conference that he did with the fan media. He was brought up, and he obviously visited Celtic Park, and those photos surfaced at some point over the last few years. He visited it with a friend of his when he was over from Australia, but he supported Liverpool. And through Kenny Dalglish, you had this knowledge of Celtic. But it's not as if growing up he had this dream of coming to Celtic. And although it was soured first time round, Brendan Rodgers, he comes from a Celtic supporting family, Kev. He was a Celtic supporter. He talks about it more regularly this time round than he did first time round. And I think that, we were used as a platform for Ange. He'd never managed in the English Premiership. And as soon as he got an opportunity, he was gone. Brendan has done it. You said it at the top of the show. He's done it for 3 different teams in the Premier League: Swansea, Liverpool, and Leicester City. And I think that, it's not as though it's an itch that he needs to scratch, Kev. I think he'll have other ambitions in football, but it won't necessarily be to go to a Spurs, or a team like that, in my view. Are you once bitten, twice shy when it comes to this? I know that obviously your Brendometer has been up and down over the last couple of years, Kev, but what's your feeling? Because I'm not feeling as though there's an agitation here. This will lead into the season ticket prices, etc., as well, because people are reading into that, talking about Brendan's in it. That means nothing. Brendan being in a video, it's like you buy it, or you're gifted a calendar at Christmas, and by May every player's left. It doesn't matter.
Wayne Rooney was January in the Plymouth Argyle calendar, and he was binned on the 31st of December.
There you go.
So
exactly.
It means nothing. Look, I don't think Brendan's been in the Premier League, and there's completely vast differences, as you point out, between him and Postecoglou. Vast. Utterly vast. Postecoglou, as soon as he got that opportunity, and it was probably presented to him in about the February-March time, he was going to Spurs.
Yep.
Nothing was stopping him going to Spurs at that point. The thing about Postecoglou was he had the immigrant backstory, so he knew he connected with the DNA of the club. He connected with the DNA, even though he wasn't a Celtic fan. He connected with the DNA of the club. With Postecoglou, you had to be all in emotionally, and that's why I never thought it was ever going to work for him at Spurs, because they wouldn't have backed him emotionally for the stands, and I think that's right for the start. You could actually see that the Spurs fans didn't buy into him. Just didn't buy it. Look, you can argue all the time you should have a plan B, this and that. I think we were one of the only fan bases in Britain which would have bought into him completely. The other one would have been Liverpool, and the other one would have been Man United, I reckon. I think we are only we're supporters bases with a certain football intelligence, where we know where we want to see our teams play certain ways, such like that. It was never going to work for him at Spurs. With Brendan, I mean, he maybe wants to win an English Premier League, but that's the clubs that are going to come in for him. He will only get that opportunity. He's managed to win an FA Cup with Leicester, which is a phenomenal achievement. No, I don't think he's got an EPL itch to get back down there very, very soon. He might have in a couple of years, but he will be here next season, and it will be really, really interesting to actually see what happens during the summer if he goes to 4 or 5 years. The 3 years on his terms, and what happens in the summer got to be on his terms as well, and the decision with him will be on his terms. But I can't see him, even if he leaves Celtic after the 3 years, going back to the English Premiership right away.
What I would say, Kev, right, is I think you can gauge this in many, many ways on the evolution, if we can even use that word, of the recruitment since Brendan came in, right? So he's come into the football club, and he's been sold a line when it comes to how Celtic would be recruiting, because it was discussed, as I say, when he first came into the football club, he was asked that question. And he said that he had spoken to Callum McGregor, and Callum had said, look, we're doing things differently now. You should see the quality that we're bringing to this football club. And that's fine if you're going to start name dropping Kyogo and Matt O'Reilly. Dyson back then wouldn't have been the Dyson now, but obviously still a good acquisition at the time, Rio Atati, etc. And that was fine, Kev. But those signings, or the vast majority of the successful signings under Ange happened in season 1. Not all of them, but most of them, right? So we'd already seen that kind of change, if you like, in the recruitment. And we started bringing in a lot of people who actually didn't carve out a career at Celtic and ultimately left the football club. And we were still in that cycle, if you ask me, when it came to Brendan Rodgers' what will always be officially his first transfer window, even though it was a transitional period and he has come in kind of late in the day with a lot of those deals, Kev. So you could probably track right back to that first press conference where Brendan's saying, I sign off on every player, to moving on a season or so when the frustrations have set in with some of these signings, where he's not quite washed his hands with them, but it's clear he had nothing to do with quite a few of these guys that were coming into the football club. Hence the reason some of them haven't really played, others were loaned straight out the door, and most of them will not have a future at Celtic Football Club, right? So that was the first one, which was something of a disaster. We go into the January, that's when we bring in Kuhn and Ida on loan, and you think to yourself, all right, that's different. That's a different calibre of player. I know Kuhn's form is questionable at the moment. And then you look at the summer transfer window just passed, and you look at the amount of investment that we made, followed on from that, bringing Jota to the football club in January. And you think to yourself, right, what is the involvement in any of these transfer windows of the football doctor, Paul Tisdale? Well, he came in October, right? So the only one he could have had any kind of influence on, Kev, would have been the January transfer window just passed. But coming in October, I mean, how are you going to get everything in place in terms of your scouting, your data analysis, etc., when you're talking about bringing in players to the football club? So I think the first one where they're all fully in is probably this one coming up in the summer. And this is when you're going to see in full effect, this strategy that we have with Paul Tisdale being involved. I mean, it's all gone a bit quiet since he came to the football club. But I think this is going to be the first transfer window where it's all in. And I think it will speak volumes to the future of Brendan Rodgers at this football club. Do we do it right? Is it a success? I think this is the first one. I don't think you can gauge Paul Tisdale on January past.
Well, there was a wee rumour that he was involved last summer as well, in a sort of
like a consultancy,
consultancy sort of role. I think the problem that we've got again is the guys that negotiate the deals, and it will be interesting. It's easy enough to sign your Lewis Palmers for over the odds, and your Yangs and your Kwons and guys like that, and other boys that are getting hawked all over Europe by agents, and that's what happens. You have to have a look at Kuhn. Must have came for the scouting system. They must have identified him and went, look, this is a guy who ticks an awful lot of boxes. I think we learned that Adam Ida shares the same agent as another Celtic player, and that's why he was, and Brendan knew of Ida, and the agent went, I've got this boy for you, and he went, right, we'll bring him in, and it has been a success, even though folk have got a wee bit doubt about that, quite rightly so, this season. We've went and got Tierney back, which is another one for the Brendan phone book. We went and got Jota back, which is another guy who ticked an awful lot of boxes and says, well, he'll come to this football club. We signed Arne Engels, who is a 20-year-old. He's done well this season. You put a great thing in the WhatsApp group chat last night, which I'll give you credit for when you actually say it, regarding Arne Engels. We spent a lot of money, but we brought in a lot of money with Matt O'Reilly as well.
Yep,
so we still didn't have a net spend, really. So the club can look at it for a business sense. The money guys can look at it for a business sense and go, now we're doing well, we can bring in these gems at £1 and £2 million. But then Brendan's coming back and going, well, wait a minute, the quality I want to come here is guys like Jota, who we know what we can actually do, as guys like Arne Engels, who was a 20-year-old playing in the Bundesliga. And we'll have to get him before he actually goes elsewhere, because we can lose that. I want Adam Ida because I know him and what he's done here. There's rumours that we have spoke to Christopher Ayer again. And you look at that, you're getting a better player and Ayer coming back, but he's the level that you need. There's a guy who plays most weeks in the English Premiership, who we sell for £12 million, who's been at the Premiership, went, it's all right down here, but I want to go back to Celtic. And that's the level of player that we've got. Colin made an interesting point yesterday that level of player might be quite hard to come to Scotland because of the amount of teams that are interested in them. And this is where we need good guys to negotiate deals. And I don't think we've got that. The value of player that we're looking at will be between £7 and £10, £12 million. That's what Brendan will want. He'll only want 2 or 3 at £2 million. He won't want at 7. He want one your trusty level. No, I want that sort of signing. I do believe that Arnie Engels will only be a record signing by the time we get to the end of August. I actually do think that. But people who believe there's going to be a massive turnover in the squad in the summer, I don't think there will be, because of the way that we do business. And I fear that we'll lose out on deals because of the way that we try to do business.
This is really interesting, Kev, because what you're saying here, and I agree with you, is you can get part of the process right in terms of identifying the right player. And that's where, obviously, you bring in a team of people, sometimes headed by the football doctor, if you like, Paul Tisdale, Director of Football Operations. You bring them in and they get the recruitment side of it absolutely spot on. They can use all the best systems out there, because JP and I were talking about this yesterday. Anyone can go out and buy the best system with the cash available. You can go out and buy the best data system. And I was speaking not that long ago about somebody who's involved in this, who said it's not just data in terms of figures. You now have systems where not every game on the planet, but you can actually watch the action, Kev. So you're to use an example, Y Scout is one that's well known about, right? You go in and I type in Kevin Graham, how good is he at walking football? Oh, he's murder. No signing him. Right, I'll move on to the next one.
And then you've seen my training, you've seen my scouting tape, eh? You have seen it.
The showreel. And then from there, you can identify a short list of, I don't know, a dozen players, and then you bring it down to 5, then you scout them in person, you would hope, etc. But what I was finding out recently is that, as well as that, there's clips, there's show reels, there's highlight reels. And you know what, Kev, that just takes you to another level entirely of analysing footballers without leaving your office, if you like. So you can get all that side of things right. But what you've said is spot on. You then have to have that kind of like negotiating skill at the very top of the football club to get the deal over the line. And this is a big thing as well that you hope is not an issue. But I can understand why you would have concerns with that, Kev.
I trust the scouting. I do trust the scouting. And I don't think the scouting and how we identify players is a problem. I think it's when we get to the financial level, they go, well, wait a minute. That's what they want. And no, we're not into that. We'll give you 4 million and 5 Iron Brew bottles, and we'll maybe pay you, maybe send you a couple of jerseys for your charity foundation in 4 years' time when he leaves us. And that seems to be the way that we do it. There seems to be a barra boy way that we try to do business, which sporting directors all over the world, when you're dealing with serious football clubs, are going, nah, go away. But like what you'll probably find in the summer, we'll get linked with players at the start of the summer. We'll put in maybe low ball bids. Then by the time we get into August, if that player, we try to destable the player. We go, we're interested in you, by the way. And the player goes, I want to go there. And we actually try to like win the deal. And that doesn't work all the time. Sometimes you've just got to make sure that there's the deal best for both parties. And this is where I'm a bit annoyed with the Greg Taylor thing. Rodgers shouldn't be arguing whether Taylor should be getting a deal or not. The football side of things should be going, by the way, we've got X amount to spend next year. This is our wage budget. If we give Greg Taylor that takes it away from that, then we need to work that way. You shouldn't be getting Rodgers actually going, it's out of my hands now. No, it shouldn't be out of Brendan Rodgers' hands. It shouldn't be passed on somewhere else. He should know what his budget is, like most football clubs do. Like, there should be a sporting director there going, right, you want him, we'll need to make this work. But what Brendan will be getting told, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, was go, well, if you give him 25 grand a week, that means he might want 25 grand a week, we didn't want that. And that means, see your top target for a defensive midfielder. We need to go to number 3 because we can't do the wages. That shouldn't work. That shouldn't be the way that a modern football club works.
Another thing as well, Kev, what worries me, and I know that the CEO has changed, but the culture of the football club and the approach, I would guess, is very similar to what it has been over a period of time.
I will just see the statement by the North Curve. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, well, this is it. And you look at some players who we've spoken to who never wanted to leave the football club and who the manager didn't want them to leave the football club, but they left anyway. So it's taken out the manager's hands, Kev, as well. There's scenarios like that. I mean, Samaras is a classic example. Joe Ledley's another. And there's been loads of others that we're not even aware of, where the player and the manager wanted that guy to stay. But those who were negotiating the deals didn't see it working on the spreadsheet, and therefore they're pushed out the building. I'm going to bring in your comments. We have a big weekend of football to look forward to. Plunge, yes, absolutely. We did sign Kuhn permanently in the January. It was Ida I was referring to in terms of the loan deal that we brought in that window. The other one, Berkovic, yeah, we did have a wee chat about politics. Berkovic, is there any way we can airbrush him out of Celtic's history books, Kev? He is a disgrace.
Who would you rather airbrush out of history, Charlie Nicholas or Berkovic? Berkovic every day of the week.
Yes, and by the way, that's a brilliant point, because that's a great point. There's some ex-Celts, Kev, right, who are on the naughty step, and I don't know if they'll ever get off it. And it's maybe just because they've had a poor view in a punditry sense, if you like. Charlie Nicholas, right, in terms of a player coming through at Celtic, we talk about Arnie Engels signing him at 20-year-old for £11 million. Charlie Nicholas was scoring 53 goals a season in the early 80s. The guy was an absolute phenomenon. I remember reading one of Billy McNeil's books, and he says that in terms of natural talent, and bear in mind who Billy McNeil played alongside and managed, Charlie Nicholas was the best talent he ever worked with. Natural talent, Charlie Nicholas. And obviously he went down to Arsenal. People say it didn't work out. He scored in a cup final down there, comes back up the road to Aberdeen and then rejoins Celtic. And he enjoyed a 25-goal season under Liam Brady as well in the second spell. Never anywhere near the special talent that he was first time round. But why is he on the naughty step? Guys like Berkovic need to be permanently on that naughty step and airbrushed out the history if possible. Charlie Nick's a Celtic fan, Kev, and he's a Celtic player. Whether or not you want to call him a legend, a great, an icon, I don't know, but he was a great Celtic player.
When the guys, I would love to see on Mrs. Axom, obviously, I would like to speak with Mo Johnson. I would, because I want to see why. Well, know why now, because it's came out.
Is it like that scene in Pulp Fiction?
Like
in the basement of the shop. Is that the kind of setup you're thinking?
Charlie Nicholas, Andy Walker, but massive Celtic fans, but vilified. No, guys like Berkovic need vilified. Yeah. Guys like Berkovic need completely wiped off the face of Celtic history. Mm-hmm. Big John never kicked him hard enough.
The interesting thing, I've seen that image resurfacing in the last 24 hours, Kev. Anyone who hasn't seen the outburst of Berkovic, don't. The guy, he'll sicken you. He'll sicken you.
It's quite funny, Jim Orr's play, and when he's talking about Johnson coming back and he's going to pair him up with Charlie Nicholas. And it's one of these things that must have disappeared from my mind. And as soon as he says that, I went, I remember being really, really excited about that.
Yeah.
I do. But then things moved on and it didn't actually work out that way. So it's strange. It's strange. But no, guys like Berkovic need completely
wiped out. And talking about that image of Big John during the training ground bust up, I've spoken to John Hartson a number of times about it. He hates talking about it because it's one of his biggest regrets in football. And kicking a teammate off the job.
We make a laughing joke about it. It's but Big John, that's no one of his finest moments. He says the story he tells about sitting watching the 10 o'clock news and he was a headline and he was just sitting there going, what? Like, well, we mentioned a guy called Danny quite often on this podcast. Mm-hmm. Used to play for West Ham, and I think he was he on loan at a trialist at Celtic, Portuguese?
He was on trial. Yes, he was on trial at Celtic. He was an absolute wonder kid, was Danny. He was Portuguese prodigy. And what actually happened was he never played a competitive game of football ever again after that trial game for Celtic. He played 2 trial games, one against Livingston, one against Dundee. And he never played again. He was only 26.
Always takes me back to about what West Ham's culture was like. West Ham were doing a pre-season tour in Scotland, and they were based in Stirling, and they used to train at the King's Park in Stirling. For folk that know Stirling, it's a big public park, like, so you could go there every day and you would see Razor Ruddock Harry Redknapp and all of that on this public park in Stirling, And I remember the bounce game and Razor Ruddock absolutely horsing Danny about 20 foot in there in this bounce game. And I went like that to the old boy that was standing next to me. He's no lasting, is he? He's no lasting in that culture. It was like a brutal boys' club. That the culture that Redknapp had there at that time. That always brings me back when John speaks about that. I'm going, that was the culture of West Ham at that point, because I saw it myself. It was quite masculine to actually say the least. It was quite funny though. It was some challenge with Razor Ruddock.
Danny was on trial at Celtic at the same time as Ivan De La Pena, and we didn't sign either of the two of them. And when I had an opportunity to speak to Martin O'Neill about it, we spoke about kind of like failed trialists, because there was loads during his time. One of the most infamous one, which didn't actually happen, was Rivaldo. Remember, he says, I wouldn't mind that we look at him. So we were having a chat, and he can't even remember De La Pena being at Celtic, so I don't think he impressed them much. But there you go. We had a lot of talent back then. Kev, Dundee United at the weekend. Did you manage to get a ticket?
No, I have not. I haven't been to an away game this season, so I wouldn't even try to take a ticket off somebody that deserves one. So,
fair play. But you were an away game aficionado for many, many seasons, it's got to be said. Rashers Tierney, here we go. Kieran is coming home, and I, for one, am very happy about it. Yes, we're talking, of course, about the launch video of the season tickets. I think we can talk about that now. And the shirt, although it didn't appear for long with Tierney's name on the back of it, it was also pretty clear why Martin Compston was filming through an empty door the other week at Celtic Park. Can I just say, though, the video was an outstanding effort, and it was directed by John McLaverty. Now, you might remember that brilliant Lisbon documentary in the 50th anniversary of Lisbon. Remember when Bertie takes you back to Panmure Street and all this kind of stuff? It was immense. I mean, there's been nothing quite like it, and it won a BAFTA. You remember it won a BAFTA?
It did.
Well, that was John McLaverty's work as well. He was a director of that movie, and he directed this advert. But the big talking point as well, is it being a brilliant promo, is the price of the season tickets, Kev. What's your thoughts?
Look, I think they've went up too much. I mean, some of them have went up. Mine just went up 5%. Some of them have went up 8%. By the looks of stuff, I'm still going to buy it, of course. I'm in a lucky enough position where a £31 year increase is, I can cover that. I didn't do much else in my time. So folk will come and say you're always on holiday, but there you go. I didn't do much else in my time apart from watch Celtic and go on holiday. What really bugs me, what really bugs me, I don't think there should have been an increase. I think there should have been frozen for this season with the amount of money that we've actually got there. People say it's a cost of greed. No, all these things that are going up, it's just folk trying to keep their profits at a certain level. That's all it is. I mean, the cost of food and that going up and that. Like, I understand that, and Celtic can come out and go, our heating costs have went up, our business rates have went up, this has went up, that's went up. Right, that's all fine, but you're a football club. You do represent a vast community. This week you sent an email to the SPFL complaining about Dundee United charging us £42 a ticket. There's guys at Celtic Park playing £42 for a game with a season ticket. I'm paying £36 a game now with a season ticket. So go away with your wee tiny violin saying that you're backing up the fans. That that's the order that they're charging you £42 when you do the exact same. So just go away. You're just another football club. You're just trying to fleece us. Look, there is Celtic men on that board, and I would be really worried if you were getting overtaken with actual businessmen, because we would be getting fleeced even more. £35 to watch a game of football in Scotland is ridiculous. I saw somebody trying to compare it to Liverpool's cheapest season tickets on like £800. I went, aye, but we're watching Declan Gallagher, they're watching Virgil van Dijk. There is no comparison whatsoever. I don't think there should have been an increase. I think there needs to be a review of this. Also, there has to be a ticket exchange scheme.
Yes.
There has to be a ticket exchange scheme to improve the atmosphere at Celtic Park for guys and girls that just can't go. There's things come up, you get, you can't.
Well, to afford the ticket, you need to work, Kev, and often people are working during the times and they're getting swapped constantly.
They're getting swapped constantly. So you need to actually have a ticket exchange scheme there. Man City fans were complaining during the week there because they've got a ticket exchange scheme. Now, Man City are trying to bring in, if you exchange your ticket 3 times, it's getting took off you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you need to, when you send it back to the club, they use a resale site, and the cheapest was £88 for the other night against Aston Villa. That's how there was vast empty spaces in Man City's game. I wouldn't like Celtic to do that, but there's got to be a ticket exchange scheme to improve the atmosphere at Celtic Park. The best atmospheres that we've had at Celtic Park, out with the European nights and the Rangers games, are the games where you get the cup games where there's plenty of day trippers, for a want of a better word, and they come in there and they generate an atmosphere. They spend, if the club are interested, to spend more money in that. We need a ticket exchange scheme, but done correctly, done fairly, and done reasonably priced. But then, will it be reasonably priced when I'm getting charged £35 as a season ticket holder for a game?
You also mentioned there, Kev, in relation to a boardroom full of business people. I agree with you. I don't think we've got that at Celtic at the moment, but there's always this looking ahead to playing your football somewhere else, and that conversation comes up, particularly when you're dominating Scottish football, you're dominating your domestic league. People say, right, okay, maybe you need to progress elsewhere. If Celtic were to have done that in the past, or if they were to do it in the future, what you would find is that it would be nothing but business people in the directors' box in the boardroom, and we would be getting fleeced even more. And this is the thing with Jim Moore, who is currently playing walking football rather than talking Celtic. This is the thing with Jim Moore. He does say that. I think that if Celtic were to leave Scottish football, you'd lose a bit of that soul. You'd lose a bit of that emotion, Kev, that we hold so dear in terms of being a Celtic supporter.
If you put value on the fan experience rather than value on the fan money, you would be bending over backwards to create the Celtic end behind in that goal, to make Celtic Park the place that you want to go, right? And you would be doing everything to do that. We're talking about the south stand, the main stand as I call it, expanding that. If you add another 8,000 onto that capacity, that's going to corporate. It's not going to the 7,000 that are sitting on the waiting list. They're going to build corporate boxes and that, and there'll be more corporate money that end up in there. So we are just a football club that look to actually maximise income. And if we do up the main stand, it will be corporate. It's not going to ordinary punters like me and you.
The other thing you mentioned about the Celtic end, that's something we've been supportive of. We've had people on the show talking about it as well, Kev, over the years. But I was hearing during the week, it's more to do with the actual structure. So if you imagine the amount of people within that structure, maybe having a 90-minute experience that you would have in the North Curve currently. And I know we do it with the huddle, for example. Let's all do the huddle, and you can feel the thing bouncing, because you need, obviously, a bit of bounce in the stadium in order for that to not collapse. But someone was telling me that it's all to do with the actual design of the structure rather than an appetite from the club, even though I don't think the club has an appetite to do it, because it's almost as if we're giving too much power over to fan groups if they were to concede that and allow it to happen. I'm right behind it. I'm also right behind the club.
I didn't actually get that, because they've put the rail seating below me in that corner as well. Mm-hmm. So if they can't put it there, I mean, the stadium's 30-year-old now. I mean, and so there must be a place where they can put it. There is an appetite for a larger standing section. Can they move round a bit then? And do it in that corner, make the North Curve bigger. They've got to have a look at this, because all Scottish football's got at the moment is fan culture.
Yep.
The product's not there.
You imagine the next generation, Kev, the next generation of fans need something to, for me, whet their appetite and make Scottish football not sexy but attractive to a younger audience.
Also, as well, what we've got to actually prepare for is either a European League or more European games. And we should be working towards that just now. And the creation of the Celtic end works towards that. Because if we end up in a European League, Paul, we right away become nearly everybody in the world's second favourite football team because of the political nature in the Irish diaspora and the Scottish diaspora. Yeah, right away, you'll have Americans looking to come. So we need to actually work towards that. And the creation of the Celtic end is one of them. It's like that. But I disagree with it. I do disagree with the price hike. I think they should have froze it. They should have reduced it. But the hypocrisy of them slagging Dundee United and charging their own fans between 35 and 40 odd quid a ticket to go to Celtic Parks is no lost on me.
No, it's a good point. Second Prize FC comes in to say, I tried walking football mostly as a goalkeeper and was absolutely shattered. Maybe I should try this. Jungle Lion as well. Walking football is big in Dublin. I tried going out for a run and I pulled a muscle before I left the house. Ronnie Glavin, Kev, the legend, the poet. Just thought I'd throw that one in there, Kev, for you, mate, just to brighten up your Friday afternoon. And Lubo's Ibrox party prices up again. We love our club, but the board are taking the Michael. Yesterday we were talking, Colin, JP and I, about the lineup for this weekend, Kev. Brendan Rodgers was annoyed at the performance against St Johnstone a few weeks ago. He made changes. The changes have stuck. And the only change that would be made yesterday by Colin Watt is that he would bench Ida and bring back Jota. How do you see it going in terms of the starting 11?
There was a comment there where the guy says, we've made £100 million profit. They want Douglas Park running the football club. What I'm actually meaning, if we were taken over by businessmen whose main aim was to make a profit, you would know a difference. You would absolutely see a difference. I think Brendan's actually nailed his colours to the mast, and he's going to stick with the boys that he's trusting now. And that's your Forrest and your Idas and the changes that he's made and your Scaleses. I think the only time he'll be forced into a change is with injury, or when the league is won, he'll maybe start rotating guys, maybe keep Kuhn up to speed, try to get Jota more minutes than that. But I think he's made a wee bit of a statement. And as I said the other week there, that it wasn't the midfield that he saw was a problem.
No, he did not. And obviously there's been a lot of talk around all three of those midfielders, Kev, when you think about the criticism that all three of them have had at different points this season. Callum McGregor, I've seen comments that McGregor's done, he needs dropped. I've seen that, particularly post-match. Arnie Engels, people are saying that he's not been worth the money. Rio Hatate, again, the amount of people who criticise Hatate when he's not playing as well as he has done the last couple of weeks, yet they are quite clearly the first three picks for that midfield under Brendan Rodgers. And you can see why when it clicks, Kev, because when it clicks, it's absolutely different level. I'm a massive fan of Paulo Bernardo, huge fan of Bernardo. Luke McCowan, I think, has done pretty well in the game time that he's had. He's not been phenomenal, but he's done pretty well. However, at this moment in time, McGregor, Hatate and Engels is definitely our best midfield. Will that be our midfield going into next season, Kev?
No, I don't believe it will. But you look, when we were flying at the start of the season, there was no argument that was our best midfield three. There was no argument whatsoever. That was our best midfield three. And that sort of reverted to that. I think in terms of player cycles and the way Rodgers is looking at it and the way the players probably looking at it, I think this is probably Rio's swan song. I do think I didn't want him to go, but I can understand the reasons that are stacking up why, if we're going to lose somebody in that midfield, he's the one more than likely to actually be it. I understand that. I do believe that he's a wee bit too much of a risk for a Brendan Rodgers side. Mm-hmm. I think Rodgers likes him, but there's sometimes, is Rodgers able to trust him? I do not know. I just see, you called him a maverick, and I sometimes don't think Brendan Rodgers likes his players to be 2 Mavericks. But they'll definitely, that'll be your midfield three of the more. Go and gears your stat about Arnie Engels that you says last night. Your Arnie Engels argument.
Yeah, my argument would be this, Kev. I'm always banging on about the lack of youth development that comes through and staples their colours to the mast and becomes that next Paul McStay, that next Charlie Nicholas, right? If Arnie Engels was to have broken through from the Celtic Academy this season at the age of 20, if he had played 50 games in a treble winning season, won Man of the Match awards in a Champions League campaign where we've progressed to the knockout, scored 10 goals, had 12 assists and 4 international caps. At that age, we'd have all been sitting here saying that boy's worth 25 million quid. So I don't know where the argument is in relation to this 11 million pound. If we think we can get something of Arnie Engels' stature for 5 million pound, I'm sorry, you're not paying attention, Kev. It's going to cost you at least 11 million pounds.
It's the transfer fee. If we had even paid 2 million pounds for him, folk would be gone, oh, that's a great deal. He's going to be the next big one. I must admit, I thought on Sunday was really, really quiet. I did think I was going, is he actually playing at times? But every player's no form is temporary, as we've actually found out. So, you're right there. That is an argument that you can put to anybody about Arnie Engels. He's 21, but it's the price. But we've been conditioned to actually believe that is a vast amount of money in today's football world.
Yeah,
and we'll still do it because we've had 20 years of that conditioning.
But again, the other argument I made, Kev, was in order to finance the 3 big signings in the summer, Matt O'Reilly's transfer fee covered it. And then to bring Jota back to the football club, Kyogo's transfer fee covered it. So it's not like we're putting ourselves at risk as a business, on a business level, to bring these players to the club. I just don't think if we go into the summer that we should, at this moment in time, we want to progress in Europe, that we should sell to buy like that. I think there comes a point with that kind of amount of money in the bank that we've got, there comes a point where you're thinking, right, why not bring 2 or 3 players in of quality to add to the guys we've already got rather than replace? Because if you think about it, over the years, you could go Jota, we've sold Lila Bada for big money, we've sold Matt O'Reilly, we've sold Kyogo, guys that we then have to go out and replace with real quality, Kev, because they're massive parts of the team. I would love to go into this summer, not lose Rio Atati, not lose Daisy Maeda, because it's going to be interesting in him, obviously, but still bring in the 3 or 4, that might cost you 10 million quid. And if it does dent your bank balance, so be it, because we're actually trying to push forward in Europe, on a European stage. Talking of which, we're also trying to push forward on our YouTube channel, and we're looking for 50,000 subscribers. We're heading towards 33,000 at the moment, Kev. So it's doable by the end of the year. Big Billy Connolly, there he is, doing the Jota. He believes that we can do it. Hopefully we can. And some other new graphics I think I'll share with you today as well, Kev, that you might find on our merchandise store very, very soon indeed. This one, love that one. That's proper Hacienda factory records. Peter Saville. And we do know that Lenny is obviously in Dunfermline at the moment. That's basically yours, Kev. That's your album. That was your show, Schema Celica. So that's going to be available in a sticker pack, as is the bold Woody Guthrie. This machine kills fascists. Look at that. Fantastic. Don't forget to join us tonight at 6 o'clock, where I'll be met by Tino, Axom and Quinny. We talk all things Celtic. Where are we right now as we head towards 4 in a row, as we head towards our 6th treble in 9 years? And then we ask the question, what do we do next? What's next for Celtic? And one of the questions I asked tonight, Kev, is, as well as can we change VAR, because that's the kind of VAR system we've got, One of the questions I asked tonight is, if and when we get to that holy grail of 10 in a row, where do you see the club? Where do you see the club in 5 to 6 years' time? Do you think that we'll still be just talking about domestic dominance at that stage?
I actually see us in some form of European League. I do. I think it's coming. I think over the next couple of years, I think it's 2027 when UEFA go back to the European stuff. And it'll probably go up to 10 games. then it might go up to more because UEFA recently signed by an American company rather than the Swiss company that they've used. The Swiss company developed the Champions League. They've now signed with the company. Don't remember the International Cup that we played in, where we played Liverpool and Dublin, Leicester at Celtic Park, and Inter Milan somewhere. I think it was in America. I think it could have been it. That's who UEFA have now signed up with. So they're going to have a look at more games. I can see us for 2027 no competing in the League Cup. I think that will be something that comes in. If any Scottish teams qualify for Europe, they do not play in the League Cup. And it could be something for the teams that compete for the League Cup. If you win the League Cup, you get a European place. Because there's going to be too many games. I can see European games being held on a Saturday. I can see that actually coming. I don't think we'll get to 10. I really don't, because I don't think we'll be playing in European. I think we'll be playing in another league at that point.
So we won't blow it, is what you're saying this time around. It'll just
we may blow it. We may blow it. We have seen that in the last 4 years. All it needs is the certain things to fall certain ways, but the chances, I would like to believe that we would be in another league.
Well, let me know what you think. I know that divides opinion. We've been speaking about it for 8 years on a Celtic State of Mind, and in another 8 years, what we'll be talking about, who knows? Very interesting times ahead for Celtic. Let us know your thoughts on all the talking points, and everything that we're doing is underneath this video. All the links are there if you want to come and see us live as well. We're travelling all over the place, even to Fife, Kev. You know, we'll even go to Fife. Not a problem. Camelin, Trinent, Belfast, we go all over. Axom's road trip will go anywhere as long as there's a Celtic State of Mind involved. And of course, as I said before, give us a big thumbs up on the video and subscribe to us. And then tune in half an hour before kickoff on a Celtic State of Mind.